My name is Clara, and at 33 years old, I never imagined I'd be homeless on Christmas night. After serving 10 years in the army and sending nearly every paycheck home, I thought my family would embrace me when I returned injured. Instead, over Christmas dinner, my mother looked me in the eyes and said words that cut deeper than any combat wound. "You're a burden. Get out of this house." With nowhere to turn, I boarded a late-night bus to my grandmother's farm. I hoped her home would be a safe haven, but when she opened the door, the 5 words she spoke shattered what little remained of my heart. As I share my journey from rejection to redemption, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and if stories of resilience inspire you, please subscribe. Growing up with Victoria as a mother was like walking on eggshells scattered across a minefield. From my earliest memories, her love always came with strings attached. "I bought you new shoes, so you'd better get straight A's this semester." Or, "After all I do for you, the least you could do is clean the entire house." Nothing was ever freely given. Everything was a transaction. My father left when I was 5. I have faint memories of a tall man with a kind smile who read me bedtime stories, but those moments faded over time. After he was gone, my mother would remind me how much I looked like him, and not in a loving way. "You have his stubborn chin," she'd sneer. "Always thinking you know better than everyone else." The only steady love in my childhood came from my grandmother Margaret, my mother's mother. Her farm was my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe and just be a child. During summers, I spent weeks on her land in rural Pennsylvania. I helped with the chickens, learned to bake apple pies, and listened to her childhood stories while we rocked on the porch swing. "You have a spirit that cannot be broken, Clara," she told me once as we shelled peas. "Remember that when the world feels heavy." I clung to those words through middle and high school. Meanwhile, my mother's behavior grew more unpredictable. Some days she was almost loving, bringing home my favorite ice cream or asking about my day. Those fleeting moments of warmth kept me hoping she'd change, that one day I'd finally be enough for her love. My siblings adapted better. Daniel, 2 years younger, became the perfect chameleon, adjusting himself to whatever pleased Mom. Anna, 4 years younger than me, mastered flattery early on. "Mom, you look like you could be my sister," she'd say, and Victoria would glow with pride. I, however, was the stubborn one, the difficult child who asked too many questions and wanted too much. By 18, I knew I had to escape. The military seemed like the perfect answer, a chance to serve a greater purpose, build a new life, and maybe, just maybe, earn my mother's respect. The day I told her I enlisted, I caught something rare in her eyes: respect. "The military will be good for you," she said. "Teach you some discipline." What she didn't say, but what I quickly realized, was that my enlistment was also her financial opportunity. As I packed for basic training, she reminded me how tight money had been, how hard it was raising 3 kids alone, how the house needed a new roof. At the recruitment office, when they explained my pay, I was already planning to send a portion home. Family supports family, right? Basic training was brutal, but it made sense. For the first time in my life, the rules were clear: work hard, follow orders, support your team, and you succeed. Unlike my mother's shifting approval, the military gave structure I could trust. I thrived, graduating top of my class. On my first deployment, I set up an automatic transfer, $500 home each month. It was a big chunk of my pay, but I lived on base and had few expenses. When I called home, my mother actually sounded glad to hear from me. "Everyone at church is so proud," she said once. "I show them your photos in uniform. My daughter, serving her country." Those words sustained me through sleepless nights overseas, through fear and loneliness. For once, I believed my mother was proud of me. Finally, I thought, I'd done something right. But over time, her requests grew. The roof turned into a bathroom remodel. Then Anna needed a car. Then Daniel lost his job and moved back home. Each time, I sent more I took on extra shifts, even riskier assignments with hazard pay, just to keep up. When I came home on leave, the warmth I'd heard over the phone rarely matched reality. My mother often had a list of repairs waiting or social events that kept her away. Still, there were moments I held on to: a birthday cake with my favorite frosting, a scrapbook of military clippings, a quick hug at the airport. I treasured those scraps as proof she did love me. I just needed to try harder. Her grandma saw through it all. On her farm, walking the orchard, she'd remind me gently, "Clara, love shouldn't be this hard. You cannot buy someone's affection. And if you could, it wouldn't be worth having." But I wasn't ready to listen. My pattern was set: I would serve, I would give, and someday, it would be enough. That hope carried me through a decade of service, 3 deployments, and countless losses. I told myself I wasn't just fighting for my country, I was earning my place in my family's heart. I couldn't have been more wrong. My final deployment was supposed to be routine, a peacekeeping mission, providing security during humanitarian aid distribution in a region once torn by conflict but considered relatively stable. I had been on dozens of similar missions and had even developed a sixth sense for trouble. That day felt like any other as we escorted the aid trucks into the small village. I remember cracking a joke with Santos, one of the newer guys in our unit, while we scanned the crowd. "Keep your eyes open, but your finger off the trigger," I told him. "These are mostly just families trying to get food." The explosion came without warning. Later, they said it was an IED buried weeks earlier, forgotten. Until our convoy passed over it. All I remember is a flash of light, a deafening roar, and the sensation of being lifted into the air. When I hit the ground, I couldn't feel my legs. The screaming around me sounded far away, like it was coming from another world. I learned later that Santos had been killed instantly. 3 others were badly wounded. As for me, shrapnel tore through my right leg and lower back, shattering bone and damaging nerves. When I woke up in the field hospital, the doctor told me 2 things. First, that I was lucky to be alive. Second, that my military career was over. The next 3 months blurred into a cycle of surgeries, painkillers, and endless physical therapy. I had to relearn how to walk, with a cane and a brace. The nerve damage left me in constant pain that no medication could fully erase. But the physical suffering was nothing compared to the emotional weight: losing Santos, watching my career end, and facing a future I hadn't planned for. During recovery, my mother called more often than she ever had before. Her voice carried a tenderness I barely recognized. "We're fixing up your old room," she said once. "Daniel moved out again, so you'll have the whole space to yourself." On another call, she mentioned the church group preparing meals, saying, "Everyone wants to help our wounded warrior." The sudden attention felt strange, but comforting. Maybe this was the silver lining, finally proving to my mother that I was worthy of her care. I began to picture a homecoming filled with love and support. In my hospital bed, I dreamed of family dinners where I'd be the guest of honor, of my mother helping me through therapy, of finally belonging to a family bound by love, not obligation. As Christmas drew near, my discharge date was set. "It'll be perfect," my mother said when I called. "The whole family together for the holidays, a real celebration." The journey home was exhausting. The military arranged transport to the main airport, but from there, I was on my own. Every step with the cane sent lightning bolts of pain through my leg, and navigating the holiday crowds nearly broke me. Still, I pushed forward, fueled by the thought of the welcome waiting for me. As the plane descended into Pittsburgh, I gazed out at the snow-covered hills. After years in desert deployments and foreign bases, the sight of a true American winter filled me with a deep sense of belonging. I wasn't just returning to a country, I was returning to a family. Or so I thought. The first hint that reality didn't match my expectations came when I switched on my phone. No messages. No missed calls. No one asking if I'd landed safely. Brushing off the disappointment, I called my mother. "I've landed," I said. "Oh, that's today?" Her voice carried none of the excitement I'd imagined. "Well, we're busy with Christmas preparations. Can you get a cab? The ride home cost nearly $80, money I could barely spare." As we pulled up to the old two-story house, I saw the yard lit up with elaborate decorations, glowing reindeer, inflatable Santas, strings of lights around every window. My mother always loved putting on a show for the neighbors who balancing on my cane. I wrestled my duffel bag onto the icy walkway. No one came out to help. By the time I reached the front door, I was sweating through my shirt despite the winter air. My leg burned with every step. I raised my hand to knock but hesitated. This was my home. Shouldn't I just walk in? Before I could decide, the door opened. My mother stood there, looking irritated. "Were you just going to stand there all day? You're letting all the heat out." And just like that, I knew nothing had changed. If anything, it was worse. The house smelled of pine needles and cinnamon, scents that had always meant Christmas to me. A towering tree filled the living room, covered in ornaments collected over decades. Some were family heirlooms, others expensive pieces she bought to stay on trend. "You can put your things in your old room," she said, already turning away. "We converted it to a home office, but Daniel set up an air mattress for you." I stood in the entryway, leaning hard on my cane, struggling to reconcile this cold reception with the warmth she had shown me over the phone. Then my sister Anna came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a festive apron. "Chris, you made it." Her smile was genuine as she stepped forward, then hesitated, glancing at my cane. "Ganukio? I don't want to hurt you. A hug would be nice," I said, realizing how long it had been since anyone had offered me simple affection. The embrace was brief but warm, just enough to soften the chill that clung to my homecoming. "Anna, the pie needs checking," my mother's voice called from the kitchen. My sister gave me an apologetic smile before hurrying off, leaving me alone again. I made the slow, painful climb upstairs to what had once been my bedroom. As my mother had warned, it no longer belonged to me. The space was now a home office, desk, computer, filing cabinets. In the corner sat a half-inflated air mattress, a thin blanket and flat pillow tossed carelessly on top. There was no trace of my past here. No photographs, no hint of the pale blue walls I once begged for, no marks on the doorframe showing the years I grew taller. I set my bag down and lowered myself carefully onto the air mattress, which sank almost to the floor under my weight. 10 years of service. Thousands of dollars sent home. And this was my welcome. I let myself feel the sting for just a moment before sitting up straighter. Maybe they just needed time. Maybe once the awkwardness faded, warmth would return. By evening, the house buzzed with extended family. Aunt Susan and her husband Frank, my cousins Jennifer and Peter with their spouses, and finally my brother Daniel, who swept in last with a bottle of expensive wine, and not a single word for me. The gathering was loud, filled with overlapping chatter about jobs, vacations, and the kids left with babysitters so the adults could celebrate in peace. I sat quietly in a corner, the constant pain making conversation nearly impossible. Every so often, someone would glance my way, curiosity mixed with discomfort. But few bothered to speak. It was as though my injury had made me invisible, or, worse, a living reminder of things they preferred not to face during Christmas. At last, Aunt Susan approached, wine glass in hand. "So, you got hurt over there, huh?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at my leg. "Yes. Explosion. Shrapnel and nerve damage," I said, grateful just to be acknowledged. "Well, at least you're home now," she replied with forced cheer. "And the military takes care of their own, right? You must have good benefits." I opened my mouth to explain the reality, the endless paperwork, the constant battles, but before I could, my mother called everyone to the dining room. The table was a holiday masterpiece. Fine china reserved for special occasions, crystal glasses that once belonged to my grandmother, a centerpiece of poinsettias and glittering ornaments. The food matched the spectacle: golden turkey, cranberry sauce molded into perfect shapes, side dishes arranged with almost artistic care. Krista, you can sit at the end by the wall, my mother directed, pointing to a chair awkwardly crammed into a corner. That way, your equipment won't be in the way. By equipment, she meant my cane. I made my way to the seat, feeling eyes on me with each halting step. The chair was so close to the wall I had to sit sideways, my injured leg stretched out into the narrow space that remained. Dinner began with Uncle Frank's prayer, thanking God for family, health, and prosperity. No mention of service. No word of sacrifice. As dishes circulated, conversation picked up again, swirling around career triumphs. Jennifer just got promoted, youngest senior manager in company history, Aunt Susan boasted. And Peter closed that big account. Uncle Frank added. Commission was enough for a down payment on a boat. My mother beamed with pride. I always knew you two would make something of yourselves. Got the family ambition. The implication was clear. Unlike me, who had wasted 10 years in uniform. I swallowed the hurt with a bite of dry turkey, searching for a place to join in. My unit did some amazing work overseas, rebuilding schools, even. Krista, can you pass the gravy? My brother cut in, not even glancing my way, and so it went. Each time I tried to speak, someone talked over me, or changed the subject entirely. My mother, seated at the head, orchestrated the diversion like a conductor, directing attention anywhere but toward me. The breaking point came with dessert. My mother presented her prized Christmas pudding on antique plates that had belonged to her grandmother. When she handed one to me, her expression made it clear, this was meant as an honor, a symbol of belonging. I murmured my thanks, but as I shifted in the cramped chair, my leg seized in a sharp spasm. My hand jerked, and the plate slipped. It struck the hardwood floor and shattered into dozens of glittering shards. The silence that followed was complete. I'm so sorry, I whispered, already reaching for my cane to get down and clean the mess. My mother's face hardened into something cold, almost unrecognizable. Do you have any idea what you just did? Her voice was low, but it vibrated with rage. That plate survived 2 world wars, and you couldn't hold it for 5 minutes. It was an accident, I murmured, my voice small. My leg, your pain, your service. She spit the words like venom. That's all we've heard for months. Do you think you're the only one with problems? While you were off playing soldier, I was here dealing with real life, real bills, real responsibilities. I stared at her in disbelief. Playing soldier. Mom, I nearly died. And I sent you thousands of dollars over the years. Money that, she cut me off sharply. Money that barely covered the cost of keeping this house and maintaining appearances in this neighborhood. And now you come back expecting us to wait on you, to rearrange our lives around your disability. The room froze. Every eye was on us, a mix of discomfort and morbid fascination. I never expected that, I said, fighting to steady my voice. I just thought. You thought what? She snapped. That we'd be your nurses? That we'd turn this house into a hospital? Look at you, you can barely feed yourself. You're a burden, Clara. A burden I never asked for. Her words struck like physical blows. I had spent a decade believing my sacrifices built a foundation of love and respect. In a single moment, that foundation crumbled to dust. If that's how you feel, I said, forcing myself to stand, then I'll go. Best idea you've had since you got here, my mother replied coldly. Get out. Find somewhere your brokenness won't ruin everyone else's holiday. No one spoke. Not Daniel. Not Anna. Not any of the relatives who had gladly accepted the money I sent home. They sat in silence, eyes averted, as I gathered my dignity, my cane, and limped toward the stairs. By the time I came back down with my duffel bag, the broken plate was gone, dessert was served, and laughter had resumed, as if I had never been there at all. No one looked up as I slipped out into the cold Christmas night. The winter air hit like a slap, shocking me out of the numb disbelief that carried me out of that house. Reality crashed in. It was past 9, Christmas Day. I was injured, alone, and had nowhere to go. For a moment, I considered knocking, apologizing, swallowing the injustice. But before the thought settled, I heard laughter spilling from inside. The message was clear: I wasn't missed. With slow, painful steps, I made my way down the icy walkway. The nearest hotel was miles away, impossible in my condition. I pulled out my phone, checking my bank balance. The numbers twisted my stomach. After the cab from the airport, and with no final paycheck yet from my medical discharge, I had less than $200 to my name. A car slowed in front of the house. The window rolled down, revealing an elderly man with kind eyes. "You all right there, miss? Need help with your bag?" Normally, I'd have refused. The army had taught me self-reliance and caution. But these weren't normal circumstances, actually. I said, my voice catching, "A ride to the bus station would help, if it's not too much trouble." The man introduced himself as George. He carefully lifted my bag into his trunk. "No trouble at all. My wife passed last year," he explained gently. "Driving around on Christmas night keeps me from sitting alone with the memories." As we drove through the decorated neighborhoods, George shared stories of his 50-year marriage. He asked about my service, and unlike my family, he listened. He thanked me, genuinely, for my sacrifice. By the time we reached the bus station, I felt something I hadn't since landing on American soil: respected. "Where are you headed?" he asked, helping me out of the car. "My grandmother's farm." "About 2 hours from here," I admitted. "I hope the welcome there is warmer than." "Whatever sent you out tonight," he said with concern. Refusing my attempt to pay him back, he pressed $20 into my hand. "For the ticket. Merry Christmas, soldier." I watched him drive away, my throat tight. In 20 minutes, a stranger had shown me more kindness than my family had. In my entire homecoming, inside, I learned the last bus toward my grandmother's town left in 15 minutes. It wouldn't take me all the way, only to a small stop 5 miles from her farm, but it was my best option. I bought the ticket with George's 20 and a little of my dwindling funds. The bus was nearly empty, just a handful of other travelers, carrying their own unspoken reasons for journeying on Christmas night. I found a seat near the back, stretching my injured leg into the aisle, my cane resting beside me like a quiet companion. As the bus pulled away from the station, the day replayed in my mind: the cold reception, the makeshift bedroom, the strained dinner, the shattered plate, and my mother's cruel words: "You're a burden." After all I had given, after every sacrifice, this was the welcome I received at home. The contrast to my years in the military was painful. In the army, I had finally found the family I had always longed for. My unit was more than a team, we were brothers and sisters who would lay down our lives for one another. We shared meals, stories, fears, and dreams. Victories were celebrated together, and struggles were carried together. Faces came to me. Santos, young, eager, and now resting at Arlington. Captain Rodriguez, visiting me daily in the hospital until her next deployment. Specialist Wilson, who lost both legs in an explosion yet called me from his new prosthetics just to prove that life still had meaning after injury. They were my real family. But now, they were far away, and I was left behind, cast out by blood. Relatives who had never truly embraced me. Outside, the suburbs gave way to long stretches of highway, then to the rolling farmlands of western Pennsylvania. Even in the night, lit only by passing cars and the glow of distant farmhouses, I recognized the land. These fields held my happiest childhood memories, days spent at my grandmother's farm. I realized I hadn't warned her I was coming. It was past 10:30, long after she would have gone to bed. My phone was almost dead, my charger left behind. In my rush to escape, I managed one call before it died, but it went straight to voicemail. Anxiety gnawed at me. What if she wasn't home? What if she was away for the holidays? What if even she saw me as a burden? No. I couldn't believe that. Margaret had always been my safe harbor, the one person who loved me without condition. She would welcome me. She had to. The bus arrived at the small town station just before midnight. The driver called out our stop, and I gathered my things. Hobbling to the front, "Merry Christmas," he said as I stepped carefully down to the sidewalk. "Someone meeting you?" "No," I admitted. "I need to get to a farm about 5 miles north of here." He frowned. "Not much for taxis in this town, especially tonight." "And in your condition," I nodded. 5 miles might as well have been 50. Before I could speak, he crossed the street to the only open business, a small convenience store. Moments later, he returned with an older man. "This is Harold," the driver explained. "Owns the store. Says he's headed that way after he closes in about 15 minutes. Can give you a ride, if you'll wait." Relief washed over me. "Thank you," I whispered, fighting back tears. "I can wait." Harold was another unexpected angel on this strange Christmas night. After locking up, he helped me into his pickup and listened as I gave directions. He asked about my service with genuine curiosity, sharing that his son was currently deployed with the Navy. "Must be hard," he said quietly, "coming home to a country that doesn't really understand." "Harder. Coming home to a family that doesn't want to," I answered before I could stop myself. Harold just nodded, wise enough not to push. The truck's headlights lit up the familiar wooden sign at the entrance, "Margaret's Orchard and Farm." Below it, the smaller sign I remembered from childhood, "All are welcome here." I prayed that still included me. The farmhouse stood tall against the night sky, weathered but strong, with a single kitchen light glowing like a beacon of hope. "Want me to wait until you're inside?" Harold asked, steadying me as I climbed out. "No, thank you. You've done more than enough. My grandmother and I are close. She'll be glad to see me." With a wave, he drove off, his taillights fading into the dark. I stood alone, gathering my courage before starting up the gravel path. Each step with my cane sent shocks of pain through me, but I pressed on, eyes fixed on that light. The 3 porch steps felt like a mountain. By the time I reached the door, sweat drenched my shirt. Despite the December chill, and my breath came ragged. I leaned against the frame, trying to steady myself. What would I say? How could I explain showing up, unannounced, near midnight on Christmas? The truth felt too heavy to speak. Before I could think more, my hand lifted and knocked. The sound echoed through the silent night. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, fear rising. Was the house empty? Was this hope just another illusion? Then I heard it, movement inside. A chair scraping. Footsteps. The porch light flickered on, blinding me. When my vision cleared, the door opened, and there she was. My grandmother. Margaret. Older than I remembered, her auburn hair now fully silver, new lines etched across her face. She wore a faded robe, flannel pajamas, and glasses perched on her nose. Her eyes swept over me, the cane, the bag, the exhaustion written on my face. Her expression shifted from surprise to something I couldn't name. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm sorry to show up like this." She raised a hand, stopping me. Her face hardened in a way I had never seen before. And when she finally spoke, her voice was cold. "Your mother called. Go away." The words struck me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance, as the last fragile pieces of my heart crumbled to dust. The one person I thought I could trust, the one bond one believed was real and unconditional, had just rejected me as cruelly as my mother had done. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process this final betrayal. Tears streamed down my face as I swayed on her porch, completely shattered, and then, in an instant, everything changed. Margaret's harsh expression softened, shifting to alarm, and then fierce love. She rushed forward, grabbing my arms before I collapsed. "Clara, oh my God. I'm so sorry." "It was a test," she said urgently, pulling me into her embrace. "Your mother called hours ago with some ridiculous story about you having a breakdown, becoming violent, stealing from her. I knew it was lies, but I needed to see your face to know for sure. The relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. Margaret, stronger than she looked, held me upright and guided me inside, kicking the door shut behind us. What did she do to you? She demanded as she lowered me onto her worn sofa. Tell me everything. Through sobs and exhaustion, I told her, the cold welcome, the converted bedroom, the disastrous dinner, and finally my mother's cruel dismissal. Margaret listened without a word, her expression darkening with every detail. That woman, she said at last, her voice trembling with fury. My own daughter. I have never felt such shame in my life. She disappeared briefly, returning with a glass of water and 2 pills. For the pain, she explained gently, reading my tension with uncanny accuracy. Then we'll get you into a proper bed. Everything else can wait until morning. As I swallowed the medication, she sat beside me, holding my hands in hers. Clara, listen to me. You are not a burden. You are a hero, not only for your service, but for your kindness and strength. This is your home, for as long as you need it. She said no one wanted me, I whispered, the words still burning like fresh wounds. She was wrong, Margaret said firmly. I want you here. I've missed you every single day for 10 years. Having you home, even like this, is the best Christmas gift I could ever receive. She helped me into the guest room, and I realized it had been waiting for me all along. Unlike the makeshift space at my mother's, this room radiated love, photos of me in uniform on the dresser, a handmade quilt in my favorite colors, even the books I had cherished as a teenager still lined the shelf. You kept all this for me? I asked, overwhelmed by the proof of belonging. Of course I did, Margaret replied softly. This has always been your home, too. She eased me into bed, careful with my injured leg, and hummed the same lullaby she had sung to me as a child. The melody, mixed with the medication and exhaustion, pulled me toward sleep. Just before I drifted off, I felt her hand brush the hair from my forehead. Rest now, she whispered. You're safe. You're home. And for the first time since returning to American soil, I truly believed her. The first rays of winter sun filtered through the curtains when I awoke the next morning. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The soft quilt, the familiar smell of fresh bread, it all felt like a dream after the nightmare of yesterday. Then the pain in my leg reminded me. Reality returned. I was at my grandmother's farm. My mother and family had cast me aside. I was injured, unemployed, and essentially homeless, except for the sanctuary Margaret had given me. A soft knock, then Margaret entered with a breakfast tray and steaming coffee. How are you feeling this morning? She asked gently, setting the tray down. Physically or emotionally? I tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. Both, I'd imagine, are pretty rough, she said, settling on the edge of the bed. But we'll work on healing both, one day at a time. Over breakfast, she urged me to talk, not just about Christmas dinner, but about my years in the military. Unlike my family, who had never cared to listen, Margaret leaned in, asking questions, expressing outrage at the dangers I had faced, and pride in the service I had given. You know, she said as she cleared the dishes, your mother has always been self-centered, even as a child. I tried to teach her empathy, but some people are simply incapable of seeing past themselves. I kept thinking if I just did enough, gave enough, she would finally love me, I admitted. Margaret's eyes softened with compassion. That was never going to happen, Clara. Not because you weren't worthy, but because she simply isn't capable of giving it. In the days that followed, Margaret helped me process not only the recent rejection, but also a lifetime of conditional love. She brought out boxes of letters I had sent her during deployments, showing how she had treasured every one. I read each one at least a dozen times, she said. And I showed them to everyone who would listen. The church group probably knew more about your missions than your own unit did. Then came a revelation that first filled me with rage, before settling into sorrow. Margaret had tracked the money I sent home over the years, worried about the large sums. I confronted your mother, she told me, spreading financial records across the table. I knew what your salary was, and what you were sending seemed far too much. She swore you were fine, that you had plenty left. The truth was devastating. Most of my contributions hadn't gone toward family needs. My mother had used the money for luxuries, vacations, and appearances. The roof I thought I had funded was never replaced. My sister's education was paid by loans and scholarships, not by me. She was using you, Margaret said plainly. And I bear some blame for not stepping in sooner. You couldn't have known, I told her. Still, the betrayal cut deeper, knowing my sacrifices had been wasted. Within a week, Margaret insisted I see her longtime physician, Dr. Martin, worried my leg wasn't healing right. The elderly doctor examined me carefully, the military team. Did decent work, he said, but your therapy plan is outdated. And these medications, they're far too strong for long-term use. With his guidance, I began a new recovery plan, transitioning to better therapy and safer pain management. By January, heavy snow blanketed the farm, turning it into a beautiful, but challenging, winter wonderland. And just when I thought I couldn't keep going, Margaret's community stepped in with a kindness that left me in awe. Her church friends brought home-cooked meals and drove me to my therapy appointments. Her neighbors' teenage sons came over to shovel snowy paths so I could practice walking with my cane on steady ground. The biggest surprise was realizing how much Margaret had already shared about me. People I'd never met greeted me by name, telling me stories she had passed along, stories of my service, my struggles, my accomplishments. One night by the fireplace, after another long day of visitors, I teased her, "You've been bragging about me." "Of course I have," she said without hesitation. "I've always been so proud of you." As winter gave way to spring, I found new purpose in helping around the farm in ways my body could handle. I couldn't climb ladders or haul heavy tools, but I could update the books, wrestle with Margaret's ancient computer system, and even care for some of the smaller animals. The mix of light farm work and steady therapy sessions slowly improved my mobility. The pain never disappeared, but it became manageable. More importantly, I learned ways to handle flare-ups without relying on the strong medications that dulled both the pain and my mind. But the deepest healing wasn't physical, it was emotional. Under Margaret's patient guidance, I began to see how my entire life had been shaped by the desperate need to earn approval, especially from my mother. I had joined the military, sacrificed money I didn't have, and pushed myself past breaking points, all in hopes of winning her love. Love that has to be earned isn't really love, Margaret told me as we planted spring vegetables in her greenhouse. That's just a transaction. And you deserve more than that, you deserve acceptance. Without conditions. When the snow finally melted and green shoots filled the orchard, I made a choice that once felt impossible: I would stay on the farm for good. The realization came slowly, built on countless small moments of peace and belonging. "Are you sure?" Margaret asked when I told her. "This life is quiet, so different from what you've known. And you're still young, there are so many paths ahead." "I'm sure," I told her. "For the first time, I'm choosing what brings me joy and peace, not what earns someone's approval." Together, we adapted the farm to make it work. Margaret turned her ground floor study into my bedroom so I could avoid stairs on painful days. We added handrails where I needed them and rearranged the barn so I could help with chores without straining my injuries. In late March, I got a call from my sister Anna, the first contact from family since Christmas night. Her voice was hesitant. "I've wanted to call," she said. "What happened at Christmas was wrong. The way Mom treated you, the things she said, we shouldn't have stayed silent." "But you did," I replied softly. Not accusing, just stating the truth. "Yes," she admitted. "We did. No excuses, only that Mom has always controlled the story, and it felt easier to follow her lead than to stand up to her." The conversation was painful, but necessary. Anna didn't ask for forgiveness, which I respected, but she did ask if we could try to rebuild as sisters, apart from our mother's shadow. I'd like that, I said honestly. But slowly. My brother Daniel was different. His one call in April wasn't about reconciliation, it was about money. Mom says you still have access to the family account, he said bluntly. She needs you to transfer your disability back pay when it comes through. The old me might have agreed, desperate to earn their approval. But the new me recognized the manipulation. No, Daniel, I said firmly. That's not going to happen. My benefits are to build my future. His response was disbelief. After everything Mom's done for you? What exactly has she done for me, Daniel? I asked quietly. His silence told me everything. With Margaret's encouragement, I took legal steps to protect myself. A veterans advocate guided me through the benefits system, making sure my mother could never touch my pension or disability pay. I closed joint accounts, removed her from my policies, and set clear boundaries. Your resources are limited, Margaret reminded me when guilt crept in. You need to secure your own future. By summer, life had taken on a steady rhythm. My days balanced therapy, adapted farm tasks, and online courses I'd begun through my military education benefits. I was studying agricultural business management, combining my leadership experience with my new love of farming. The transformation went far beyond my daily routine. For the first time, I was making choices based on fulfillment, not approval. I was learning to accept help without shame, to set boundaries without guilt, and to finally see my worth as separate from what I could give others. You stand taller now, Margaret observed one evening as we watched fireflies dance over the fields. Not just physically, I said with a smile. And she was right. Despite the limp, despite the cane I would likely always need, I carried myself with a new confidence. The real weight I had shed wasn't my injury, it was the crushing need for validation from someone who could never give it. I feel taller, I told her. And lighter, too. That's what happens, Margaret said gently, squeezing my hand, when you stop carrying other people's expectations and start honoring your own truth. 1 year after that painful Christmas, the farm had grown alongside me. What began as Margaret's retirement project had blossomed into a true family business shaped by both our visions. The orchard now had wide, accessible paths, not just for me, but for elderly visitors and families with strollers. We had transformed an old outbuilding into a farm store, selling apple products, honey from new beehives, and fresh vegetables. Physically, I had reached my plateau. The nerve damage was permanent, and pain remained part of my daily life. Some days, I still needed the wheelchair we kept nearby. But I had learned to adapt, to pace myself, and most importantly, to accept my limitations without labeling them as failures. Beyond the physical, my emotional and intellectual growth was undeniable. I had completed courses in sustainable farming, business management, even web design. The farm now had a thriving website and social media presence that brought in customers from far beyond our small town, and with Margaret's encouragement, I had found another purpose: giving back. I started a small program inviting fellow veterans to spend days on the farm, a place of healing, community, and peace, just as it had been for me. Many of them, like me, struggled with the shift back to civilian life. But we found peace in the steady rhythm of farm work and the warmth of our small community. Margaret, now in her late 70s, embraced these changes with her usual enthusiasm. The farm has never been so alive, she often said, watching visitors wander through the orchards or join in seasonal activities. My relationship with Anna had cautiously improved. She had visited twice, awkward at first, but slowly warming to the new life I had built. She brought her children, my niece and nephew, who loved gathering eggs from the henhouse and feeding the goats we had added to the farm. Daniel, however, stayed distant, still deeply tied to my mother. I had made peace with that, knowing some relationships can't be forced into health. As for my mother, I hadn't seen or spoken to her since that Christmas night. Through Anna, I heard bits and pieces. She had remodeled the house again, joined a new social club, even taken a Mediterranean cruise. Her life continued untouched by my absence. To me, that was proof I'd made the right decision to walk away. Or so I believed, until an unseasonably warm day in early December, when a familiar car rolled up the farm's driveway. I was in the store helping a customer choose apples for a holiday pie when I spotted her through the window. Victoria, impeccably dressed as always, stepped out of her luxury sedan. Scanning the farm with thinly veiled disdain, and Margaret, restocking shelves nearby, followed my gaze. "Do you want me to send her away?" she asked softly. I thought about it. A year ago, I might have hidden, leaning on Margaret to shield me from the storm my mother always carried. But I wasn't the same person anymore. "No," I said. "I can handle this." I finished with the customer, then walked outside, conscious of my uneven gait but no longer ashamed of it. My mother's eyes flicked to my cane, then quickly away, as if the reminder of my injury offended her. "Hello, Mom," I said, steady and calm. "This is a surprise, Clara," she replied with a stiff nod. "You look healthy." "I am. Thank you. What brings you here?" She glanced around, the farm, the steady flow of customers, the new sign advertising our products. "I was in the area," she said, though we both knew that wasn't true. "My mother never came without an agenda." Finally, she spoke. "Your disability back pay came through. Daniel said you were being unreasonable about sharing it." And there it was. After a year of silence, no apology for the cruel words, no acknowledgement of that night, she had come for money. In the past, I might have given in. I might have believed that buying my way back into her good graces was the same as love. But now I saw it clearly. This wasn't love. It was emotional extortion disguised as family duty. "My disability pay supports my life here and my future," I told her firmly. "I won't be sharing it." Her expression hardened. The mask of concern slipped away. "After everything I've done for you? I raised you. I gave you a home. I supported your decision to join the military." "Did you?" I asked, honestly, curious about her version of our history. "I remember sending money home for 10 years. I remember calling and writing, and hearing little back. I remember coming home injured and being called a burden, then thrown out on Christmas night." "You're exaggerating," she scoffed. "You were emotional, difficult. Your injury clouded your judgment." I felt that old knot of doubt rising in my chest, but this time, it was met with something stronger. "Clarity, Mom," I said gently. "I don't expect you to understand or admit what happened. I've accepted that our relationship will never be what I hoped. But I want you to know I'm happy here. I found purpose and peace. And I don't need to buy your approval anymore." She froze, unprepared for my calm refusal. "Your grandmother poisoned you against me," she snapped. "No," I corrected. "Grandma simply loved me without conditions. She showed me what real family looks like." At that moment, Margaret walked out of the store. She moved slowly but with quiet strength. "Victoria," she said, giving her daughter a steady nod. "If you've come to make amends with Clara, you're welcome to stay for tea. But if you've come for any other reason, I think it's best you leave." My mother studied us, calculation flickering in her eyes. Realizing neither of us would bend, she straightened her shoulders. "I can see I'm wasting my time. When you come to your senses, Clara, you know where to find me." Without another word, she returned to her car and sped off, gravel crunching under her tires. I stood there, surprised by the absence of pain. Where once I would have felt shattered, now there was only quiet relief. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yes," I said, and for the first time, it was true. Better than okay. That evening, we sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the winter sky in pinks and golds. Margaret broke the silence. "You know, when you showed up at my door last Christmas, I was terrified for you. You were so broken, not just in body, but in spirit." I admitted. I had built my identity around chasing love that was never going to be freely given. But now, looking out over the farm, I finally understood. Family isn't always blood. It's the people who stay when all you can do is keep standing. The ones who see your worth, not for what you can give, but for who you are. Margaret smiled, the fading light softening her features. That's a lesson many people never learn. I had a good teacher, I said, squeezing her hand. As darkness settled over the farm, I reflected on how much had changed in just a year. The injury that once felt like the end had become the beginning of a more authentic life. The rejection that broke me had freed me to find love built on truth, not obligation. Margaret had shown me that real love lifts you up, not drags you down. That boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. That starting over isn't failure, it's courage. Most of all, she had taught me this: our worth is not defined by how others treat us, but by the truth we carry within. That hard-earned lesson was the greatest gift I had ever received. As the first stars appeared in the winter sky, I felt a sense of completion. The journey wasn't over. The healing wasn't perfect. But I had found my way home, in every way that mattered. Have you ever wondered how different your life might be if you hadn't faced rejection or hardship? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear them. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that family is about love and connection, not just blood. Thank you for being part of this journey. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.